hundreds of miles from civilization, high above the tree line, fire watchers sit alone, staring into an endless wilderness. And some of them report things so disturbing, so unexplainable, that many never return to their posts again. Today, we're counting down the top 10 most chilling encounters ever reported from remote fire lookout towers. And I'm warning you now, once you hear number 1, you'll never look at forests the same way again. Most people think being a fire watcher is peaceful. You sit in a tower, enjoy nature, and watch for smoke. But these remote towers are often deep in national forests, sometimes 30 to 50 miles from the nearest human. No roads, no signals, no backup. And what fire watchers see out there, it isn't always fire. Sometimes it's something much, much worse. Reports of creatures, lights, voices, and events that cannot be explained by wildlife or weather. And many of these accounts come from trained professionals, former rangers, EMTs, wildfire experts, people who don't scare easily. Let's begin. Starting our countdown at number 10, the man standing in the fire zone. One watcher reported seeing a man standing dead still inside an active burn zone, an area he knew was over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The figure wore no gear, no protection, just standing there amidst the heat and smoke. He radioed it in, baffled. But when he looked back through his binoculars, the man had moved. Not walked, moved, as if he had instantly jumped several hundred feet away. When search crews finally arrived, they found zero tracks, zero signs of life, just ash. Just ash. Coming in at number 9, the tower that answered back. A fire watcher kept hearing another tower calling his name over the radio. The strange part, the nearest tower was 17 miles away and completely empty for the season. He ignored it at first, thinking it was interference. But the calls became clearer, more insistent. When he finally called back, asking who was there, the voice mimicked him. Same tone, same rhythm, like hearing your own recording talking back to you. The voice ended its transmission with 2 simple words, turn around. He spun around, heart pounding. Nothing was there. Number 8 is the running giant. One night, a watcher's motion sensors started going off. He checked the readouts, expecting a deer or a bear. But the data showed footsteps spaced 6 to 8 feet apart. Something massive was running straight uphill toward his tower. He described it as too big for a bear, too fast for a human, and too quiet for a moose. The footsteps got closer and closer, thudding against the earth. And then, whatever it was, it stopped right at the base of the tower. He never saw it, but he heard it. It just stayed there all night. Our number 7 spot goes to the woman crying in the valley. A seasoned watcher kept hearing a woman crying for help from a deep, rocky valley nearby. He knew the terrain well. It was so steep and treacherous that no one could possibly be down there, especially not at night. He called it in, and search and rescue teams scoured the area. They found nothing. The crying returned the next night, faint but clear. But here's the truly disturbing part. Every time he tried to pinpoint the sound with his equipment, the cries would suddenly move, sounding as if they were coming from right behind him. At number 6, we have the lights that hunted. A watcher in Oregon was monitoring a small, contained fire when he saw a series of bright, silent lights appear over the ridge. They weren't from a helicopter or a plane. They moved erratically, darting back and forth over the treetops. Then they began to systematically move through the forest, almost as if they were searching for something. He watched for nearly an hour as these lights combed the wilderness, their beams cutting through the darkness. Just before dawn, they converged, shot straight up into the sky, and vanished without a sound. Halfway through our list at number 5 is the whispers on the windows. During a severe thunderstorm, a watcher was huddled inside his glass-enclosed cabin at the top of the tower. The wind was howling, rain was lashing against the panes, and that's when he heard it. Whispers. Not from the radio, but from outside, right against the glass. Not from the radio, but from outside, right against the glass. The voices were too low to understand, but they were distinctly human, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. He was over 100 feet in the air, in the middle of a storm. There was no balcony, no ladder, nothing for anyone to stand on. The whispers continued until the storm passed, seeming to fade with the wind. Number 4 brings us the faceless visitor. A watcher was making coffee one morning when he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. Standing at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the tree line, was a tall, thin figure. It was just watching the tower, he grabbed his binoculars, but when he focused, his blood ran cold. The figure had no discernible face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth, pale surface where a face should be. But it was still there. He looked away for a second to grab his radio, and when he looked back, it was gone. Now we're in the top 3. At number 3, the children's laughter. This was an area with no trails, no campsites, and was miles from any town. It sounded joyful, but completely out of place. One evening, the laughter sounded closer than ever, as if it was coming from the staircase leading up to her cabin. She locked the door and didn't look out until morning. The forest was silent, as always. Our runner-up, at number 2, is the shadow that moved against the sun. It glided over hills and through valleys with a speed and fluidity that defied explanation. It wasn't the shadow of anything he could see. It was just a shadow moving on its own until it disappeared over the horizon. And finally, our number 1 most chilling fire watcher encounter, the imitation. This report is one of the most famous and unsettling stories in fire watching lore. A watcher named Helen was on duty when she received a radio call from her supervisor asking her to do a routine check on some equipment at the base of the tower. The request was a bit odd, but the voice was perfectly normal, so she complied. As she descended the stairs, her radio crackled again. It was her supervisor's voice, but this time it was frantic. He screamed, "Helen, do not go down there. That wasn't me. Stay in the tower." But she knew something was there waiting for her, something that could mimic a voice perfectly and was trying to lure her out. She scrambled back into the tower and barricaded the door, listening to the silence of the forest for the rest of her shift. She never returned to that post. From strange voices to impossible figures, these stories remind us that in the vast, isolated wilderness, some things remain unexplained. Thanks for watching. If you have a chilling story of your own, share it in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into the unknown. Stay safe out there. Ever feel like you're being watched in the woods? Well, for some fire lookouts, that feeling is their 9-to-5 job. But it's not always hikers or wildlife they're seeing. Welcome to the loneliest, most isolated job on the planet, where reality starts to blur and the woods whisper back. Today, we're counting down the top 10 creepiest things fire watchers have ever seen. These are real accounts, logged and reported, from people who spend months alone, staring into the heart of the wilderness. Grab your blanket, turn down the lights, and let's get started. Coming in at number 10, we have the echoes in the static. Picture this, you're hundreds of miles from the nearest town. Your only link to the outside world is a crackling radio. Most of the time, it's just static and routine check-ins. But every now and then, something else breaks through. Multiple lookouts stationed in different national forests across North America have reported hearing faint, distorted voices during severe storms. Not other lookouts, not park rangers. The voices speak in languages that are unrecognizable, sometimes sounding like they're singing or chanting. One ranger tried to record it, but all he got was static. When he played it back for his supervisor, though, they both heard a single, clear word in the noise. Listen, the supervisor, a man who'd worked the forest for 30 years, just turned pale and told him to forget he ever heard it. At number 9, the children's laughter. Nothing is more out of place in a remote, dangerous wilderness than the sound of children playing. Yet, it's a surprisingly common report. A lookout in the high Sierras reported hearing giggles and laughter carried on the wind, always from the same direction, a steep, inaccessible ravine. There were no trails leading there, no campsites, nothing. He'd hear it most often at dusk, just as the sun dipped below the peaks. He never saw anyone, but the sounds were so clear he once radioed it in, thinking a family was lost. A search party was sent. They found nothing. No footprints, no signs of passage. The official report logged it as auditory illusion caused by wind, but every lookout who has worked that tower since has reported the exact same thing. Number 8 is a phenomenon known as the silent procession. A lookout in Montana was tracking a small brush fire when he saw movement on a distant ridge. Through his binoculars, he saw a single file line of figures walking slowly along the ridgeline. They weren't dressed like hikers. They were tall and slender, all wearing identical dark, hooded cloaks. They moved with a strange, gliding motion, not like they were walking, but like they were floating just above the ground. He counted over 20 of them. They moved in absolute silence, casting long shadows in the afternoon sun. He watched them for nearly an hour until they disappeared over the ridge. He checked his maps. The path they were on didn't exist. It was a sheer cliff face. At number 7, we have the imitator. This one is particularly unsettling. A ranger in Idaho started hearing strange noises at night. It started with tapping on the tower's windows, which he first blamed on birds. Then, he started hearing his own name being whispered from just outside the door. One night, the radio crackled to life. It was his own voice, perfectly mimicked, calling for help. It said his leg was broken and he was at the base of the tower. He knew he was inside, perfectly fine. His blood ran cold. He looked out the window and saw nothing. The voice on the radio became more and more frantic, pleading with him to come down. He spent the entire night huddled in the corner, listening to himself beg for a rescue that wasn't real. When dawn broke, the voice was gone. Now for number 6, the lights that followed the tower. Several watchers over a 12-year period reported this same event. Floating lights, soft white or pale green, moving silently through dense fog and circling their towers. No engines, no aircraft logs, no sound. Just lights drifting up, down, and then disappearing straight into the ground. One watcher described it as, like the forest was breathing. These reports often came during nights with zero visibility, when the fog was so thick you couldn't see your own hand in front of your face. Yet, these lights would navigate the treacherous terrain with ease, sometimes hovering just feet from the lookout's window before vanishing as if they were never there. At number 5, we have the person without a face. A veteran fire watcher in Oregon scanned a clearing and spotted what looked like a hiker, but the face just smooth. Like clay someone forgot to sculpt. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. He looked away for half a second just to rub his eyes, and when he looked back, it was gone. When he reported it expecting to be laughed at or told he was seeing things, the supervisor simply said, "You're the third person this year to see that." The description is always the same, a humanoid figure normal in every way except for a completely blank face. It's never aggressive. It just observes, and then it's gone. Number 4 is the tower that wasn't there yesterday. Imagine you've been working the same post for weeks. You know every ridge, every valley, every tree. Then one morning, you wake up and see something new. One crew spotted a strange wooden structure on a ridge that had never contained a tower before. It looked old, rotted, and unstable. But at night, a warm light glowed inside it. By morning, the structure was gone. No tracks, no debris, no disturbed soil, and the ridge, completely bare, as if nothing had ever stood there. This phantom tower has been reported in at least 2 different national forests, always appearing and disappearing within a 24-hour cycle. Coming in hot at number 3, the glitch in the scenery. This one sounds like something out of a simulation. A lookout was scanning the horizon, a view he had memorized over years of service. Suddenly, a large patch of trees, maybe 100 yards across, just pixelated. He described it like a corrupted image file. The colors blurred, the shapes distorted into jagged blocks, and then it snapped back to normal. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but then it happened again a few minutes later, in a different spot. He checked his equipment, thinking it might be a reflection in his binoculars, but the effect was visible with his naked eye. He felt a profound sense of wrongness, like he'd just seen a tear in the fabric of reality itself. Our runner-up, at number 2, is the man in the red flannel. This story is almost a legend among lookouts in the Pacific Northwest. They say a friendly man in a red flannel shirt will sometimes visit the most remote towers. He'll show up out of nowhere, share a cup of coffee, and talk for a while about the weather or the history of the woods. He's always pleasant, and his visits are a welcome break from the solitude. But here's the thing, he never leaves footprints. He appears on days with fresh snow or mud, and when he leaves, there's no trace he was ever there. When lookouts describe him to their supervisors, they're often shown an old photograph from the 1930s. It's a picture of a ranger who went missing in a blizzard decades ago. He was last seen wearing a red flannel shirt. And finally, the number 1 creepiest thing ever seen by a fire lookout, the shadow that haunts. This isn't a single event. It's a recurring entity reported across multiple states. Lookouts describe seeing a massive, vaguely humanoid shadow moving through the trees below them. It's far too large to be a bear or any other known animal. It moves with terrifying speed and agility, darting between trees and across clearings in the blink of an eye. It's most often seen at twilight, and those who see it report an overwhelming, instinctual sense of being hunted. One lookout locked himself in his cabin for 2 days after seeing it pass directly beneath his tower, feeling the structure vibrate as it moved. It never looks up. It never acknowledges the tower. It just moves through the forest like it owns it, a silent, terrifying predator that has no name and leaves no trace, except for the paralyzing fear in those who watch from above. So, what do you think? Are these just tricks of the light and mind, brought on by extreme isolation? Or is there something else out there in the deep woods, something ancient and unknown, that watches us back? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed these stories, be sure to like and subscribe for more dives into the unknown. Stay safe out there. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be completely isolated, high above the world in a fire lookout tower? Just you, the wilderness, and miles of silence. It sounds peaceful, right? But for some, that silence is broken by things that defy explanation. Today, we're diving into the 3 most chilling and unsolved mysteries from the lonely world of far watchtowers. These are the stories that have been whispered among rangers for years, tales that make the bravest among them question what's really out there when the sun goes down. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to feel a chill run down your spine as we explore the unexplained phenomena that have haunted these remote outposts. Let's begin our countdown with a story that proves sometimes the wind carries more than just the scent of pine. Coming in at number 3, we have the unsettling case of Whisper Ridge. Picture this, a seasoned watcher, perched in a glass box miles from civilization, begins his shift like any other. The sun sets, painting the sky in fiery colors, and a deep quiet settles over the forest. But then it starts, faintly at first, carried on the breeze. He hears whispers. It's not the wind whistling through the tower's frame, it's something more. The whispers aren't random, they're calling his name, over and over. Then the voices shift, delivering cryptic warnings, telling him to leave, that he's not safe. The most bizarre part, they start reciting coordinates. He frantically scribbles them down, trying to place them on his map, but they don't exist. They point to locations that are literally off the charts, deep in uncharted territory. Panic sets in. He reaches for his radio to call for backup, to report the strange occurrences, anything to hear another human voice. But the radio is dead, just static. Every channel, every frequency is jammed. He spends the rest of the night in absolute terror, barricaded in his tiny room, as the disembodied voices continue their relentless chorus just outside his windows. He doesn't sleep a wink. The moment the sun's first light breaks over the horizon, he packs his bag, hikes down the mountain, and submits his resignation. He never looks back. The Forestry Service tried to staff the tower again, but every attempt was met with the same radio failures and unnerving reports. Eventually, they gave up. The Whisper Ridge Tower was officially decommissioned and now stands as a silent, abandoned monument to a mystery that was never solved. What were those voices, and where did those impossible coordinates lead? Some questions are better left unanswered. Our next story, at number 2, takes us to a different tower on a different night, but with a terror that is far more personal and invasive. It's called The Shadow Looking In. Imagine it's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're the lone watcher, surrounded by an ocean of darkness. The only light for miles is the faint glow from your desk lamp. You're trying to stay awake, scanning the horizon for any sign of smoke. You glance at the large window pane in front of you, the one that gives you a panoramic view of the forest, and that's when you see it, shape. It's leaning against the glass, a silhouette so tall it stretches from the bottom of the window to the top. Impossibly tall, taller than any person, taller than any animal you know. Your heart hammers against your ribs. Your first thought is that something is outside, pressed against the tower. But then you realize something is terribly wrong with that assumption. The shadow isn't being cast from the outside in. The faint light from your lamp should prevent that. No, the shadow is being cast from inside the room. It's as if something invisible is standing right behind you, blocking the light and projecting its form onto the window pane. Your blood runs cold. Your hand trembles as you reach for your heavy-duty flashlight. You take a deep breath, click it on, and spin around, flooding the small cabin with a powerful beam of light. There's nothing there. The room is empty. The cot, the small table, the radio equipment, everything is exactly as it should be. A wave of relief washes over you for a split second, until you turn back to the window. The shadow is still there, unchanged, and moving. It's a perfect, dark silhouette of a towering figure, leaning against the glass, even though the room behind you is brightly lit and verifiably empty. The logic just doesn't work. It's a physical impossibility. At that moment, the watcher knew he was in the presence of something that didn't play by the rules of our world. He didn't wait to find out what it was. He grabbed his keys, scrambled out of the tower, and didn't stop running until he reached his truck parked miles below. He drove away that night and, like the watcher at Whisper Ridge, never returned to a lookout tower again. The tower remained staffed for a while, but rumors of a persistent, unexplainable shadow continued until it too was eventually abandoned. What casts a shadow from nothing? What stands behind you, unseen, making its presence known in the most terrifying way imaginable? And now, for our number 1 most disturbing fire tower mystery. This story is different. It's not about what was heard or seen outside, but about what was found inside. It's the tale of the logbook that writes itself. Every fire tower has an official logbook, It's a critical piece of equipment where watchers record weather conditions, sightings, daily activities, everything. It's a meticulous, official record. The story begins with a watcher who started noticing things that were out of place. He'd make his entry for the day, close the book, and go about his duties. The next morning, he'd open it to a new page and find a new entry had been added overnight. The handwriting wasn't his. It was a neat, almost spidery script, and the messages were chilling. The first one he found was simple. Don't look at the tree line tonight. He dismissed it as a prank. Maybe a previous watcher left a hidden note, or maybe his mind was playing tricks on him in the isolation. He tried to ignore it, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread every time he glanced towards the trees. A few days later, another entry appeared. It's getting closer. His blood ran cold. He was the only person for at least 20 miles. No one could have gotten into the tower, written in the book, and left without a trace. He started to feel a constant, nagging sense that he was being watched. He checked the locks, barricaded the door at night, but the entries kept appearing. They became more frequent, more personal. Then came the final entry. He opened the logbook one morning, his hands shaking, and read the 7 words that would haunt him forever. You're not alone in the tower. He didn't write it. He was the only one assigned there. The implication was terrifying. Whoever was writing in the book wasn't outside anymore. It was inside with him. That was the last straw. He radioed in a frantic, incoherent message and abandoned his post immediately. Investigators who later visited the tower confirmed the strange entries were real, written in an unidentified hand. They couldn't explain how it happened. The tower was declared unsafe not because of its structure, but because of the unexplainable and deeply unsettling events. It has been abandoned ever since. The logbook locked away in an evidence locker, a silent testament to the day something in the wilderness decided to write back. These stories are just a glimpse into the strange and unexplained world of fire lookouts. Men and women who volunteer for solitude, only to find they are not as alone as they thought. From phantom whispers on the wind to impossible shadows and haunted logbooks, these tales remind us that there are still vast, wild places on our map where the rules of reality seem to bend. What do you think is happening in these remote locations? Are they psychological tricks of an isolated mind, or is there truly something unknown lurking in the deep woods, watching us from just beyond the light? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more dives into the unknown. Stay safe out there.